The night was shrouded in a suffocating darkness, the kind that seemed to swallow light and sound, leaving only a heavy, oppressive silence. Thornwood Manor loomed at the edge of a desolate moor, its jagged silhouette cutting against a sky bruised with storm clouds. The manor's stone walls, cracked and weathered, were choked with thorny vines that seemed to writhe in the faint wind. Broken windows stared like empty eyes, and a rusted iron gate creaked on its hinges, barely standing. A faded sign, half buried. In the overgrown grass, read Thornwood Estate, Private, its letters etched with an air of warning. The wind carried a low, mournful wail, like a woman's sobbing mingling with the rustle of dead leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a raven's sharp caw pierced the stillness, answered by nothing but the echo of its own cry, for figures approached the manor, their flashlights casting trembling beams across the uneven ground. Emma, a tenacious paranormal investigator, led the group, her camera strapped to her chest, its lens glinting faintly. She had been drawn to Thornwood by tales of the Weeping Widow, a spirit said to curse anyone who entered her domain, driven by a tragedy centuries old. Lucas, a pragmatic photographer, adjusted his tripod, skeptical of the supernatural but eager to capture the manor's eerie beauty for his portfolio. Nor, a folklore enthusiast, clutched a leather-bound journal, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination as she recalled stories of the widow's vengeance. Samir, a local historian with a guarded demeanor, carried a satchel of old maps and records, his knowledge of the manor's dark past making him wary of their mission. The group paused at the gate, their breaths visible in the cold, damp air. Emma's flashlight swept over the manor's facade, revealing carvings of weeping figures etched into the stone, their faces worn but anguished. The manor seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the vines tightening as if in response to their presence. Lucas set up his camera, its shutter clicking as it captured the gate's rusted bars, which seemed to bend inward, as if inviting them to enter. Nora's journal trembled in her hands as she noted the legend. A widow, betrayed and abandoned, had drowned herself in grief, her spirit cursing the manor and all who trespassed. Samir's eyes darted to the shadows where indistinct shapes flickered, vanishing when stared at directly. The wail grew louder, a sobbing that seemed to come from the manor's heart, urging them forward. Emma pushed the gate open, its screech echoing across the moor. The group stepped onto the overgrown path, their boots sinking into the soft earth. The manor's front door, massive and carved with thorny patterns, stood ajar, as if waiting. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the stench of mildew. The grand foyer a decaying relic of opulence. Chandeliers hung crookedly, their crystals dulled, and portraits lined the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow the group. Nora's flashlight caught one portrait, a woman in a black veil, her face pale and tear-streaked, her eyes hollow with sorrow. The wail intensified, now joined by faint whispers, words like betrayed and stay weaving through the air. Samir's maps rustled in his satchel, as if stirred by an unseen hand, and he froze, his face pale. The group moved deeper, their footsteps echoing on the cracked marble floor. Emma's camera recorded the foyer's decay, capturing fleeting glimpses of shadows that didn't match their movements. Lucas adjusted his tripod, his lens focusing on a grand staircase that spiraled into darkness, its banister carved with thorny vines that seemed to writhe. Nora paused to sketch the carvings, her pencil trembling as the lines seemed to shift on the page. Samir's flashlight revealed a faded inscription on the wall. Her tears bind us all, scrawled in jagged, desperate strokes. The air grew colder, the wail turning into a low, guttural sob that vibrated through the floor. As if the manor itself wept. They ascended the staircase, each step creaking under their weight. The second floor was a maze of corridors, their walls, lined with locked doors and more portraits of the veiled woman, her eyes growing more intense, almost alive. The whispers became a chorus, overlapping voices pleading and accusing, their words indistinct but heavy with pain. Emma's camera glitched, its screen flashing images of the manor's past figures in old-fashioned clothing, screaming, fleeing something unseen. Lucas's flashlight flickered, casting distorted shadows that formed fleeting shapes of hands reaching from the walls. Nora's journal fell open, its pages now filled with sketches she hadn't drawn, thorny vines curling around a weeping figure. Samir's maps began to tear, the paper aging rapidly, as if the manor rejected his attempts to understand it. The group reached a heavy oak door at the corridor's end, its surface carved with the scene of a woman drowning in a sea of thorns. Emma pushed it open, revealing a vast ballroom, its mirrored walls cracked and clouded. A chandelier swayed gently, though no breeze stirred the air, and a grand piano sat in the center, its keys stained with dark, dried liquid. The wail was deafening here, a sobbing that seemed to come from the mirrors themselves. Nora's flashlight caught a reflection not of the group, but of the veiled woman, her face contorted in anguish, her hands clawing at the glass. The image vanished, but the mirrors began to tremble, their surfaces rippling like water. Lucas's camera captured the piano, its keys moving silently, playing a melody that only the wail seemed to echo. The air grew heavier, the temperature plummeting as the group moved toward the piano. Emma's camera glitched again, showing flashes of the widow, her veiled figure standing in the ballroom, her hands dripping with black, inky tears. The floor beneath the piano cracked, thorny vines pushing through, their tips glistening with the same dark liquid. Nor dropped her journal, its pages now blank except for a single phrase repeated endlessly. Her tears bind us. Samir's satchel tore open, his map scattering, each one now showing only the manor, its layout twisting into impossible shapes. The wail turned into a scream, and the chandelier crashed to the floor, shattering into 1,000 glinting shards. The group fled the ballroom, their flashlights dimming as the manor seemed to drain their power. The corridors twisted, doors vanishing and reappearing, leading them deeper instead of out. The whispers became screams, accusing voices chanting betrayed and cursed. Emma's camera caught glimpses of the widow following them, her veiled figure flickering at the edges of vision, her sobs echoing in their skulls. Lucas tripped, his tripod snapping, and his camera captured a shadow looming over him, a woman with no face, only a veil and dripping tears. Nora's hands bled, scratched by unseen thorns that seemed to grow from the walls. Samir led them toward a basement stairwell, his face ashen, as if he knew what awaited below. The stairwell was a spiral of rusted iron, descending into a darkness that seemed to breathe. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the walls were slick with black, inky liquid that pulsed like a heartbeat. The wail followed, now a deafening cry that shook the stairs. The group reached the basement, a cavernous chamber lined with stone coffins, each carved with the same thorny patterns. In the center stood a marble statue of the widow, her veiled face weeping black tears that pooled on the floor. The liquid moved, forming tendrils that reached for the group, wrapping round their ankles. Emma's camera fell, its lens cracking, but it continued to record, capturing the statue's eyes opening black, endless voids that stared directly at them. The chamber seemed to shrink, the coffins cracking open to reveal skeletal figures, their hands clawing at the air. The widow's statue moved, its stone cracking as it stepped forward, its veil fluttering to reveal a face of pure sorrow, her tears burning the ground. The group's flashlights went out, leaving only the camera's flickering light, which showed the manors past a woman betrayed, abandoned, drowning in a sea of thorns. her curse binding her to the estate. The screams became a cacophony, voices of countless others trapped by her grief. Nor collapsed, her body entangled in vines that seemed to grow from within her. Lucas's camera stopped, its screen frozen on the widow's face. Samir stood frozen, his maps now ash, his eyes wide with recognition of the curse's truth. The chamber dissolved into a void, the coffins floating in a sea of black, inky tears. The widow loomed over the group, her hands outstretched, her sobs shaking the air. The camera, now on the ground, captured the group's silhouettes as they were, pulled into the liquid, their forms dissolving into the darkness. The final frame showed the manor's exterior, silent under the storm clouds, its windows dark but flickering with the widow's veiled figure. Text faded in. The footage was found in the moor a month later. The group was never seen again. The screen went black, leaving only the sound of a single, mournful sob fading into silence.